A single dad's quiet life unravels the night a struggling waitress crosses his path, setting off a chain of misunderstandings that pull them together, tear them apart, and force both to confront the wounds they've spent years hiding. Neither expects the chaos that follows, or the unexpected bond that could change everything. Aiden gripped the steering wheel as the rain drummed steadily against the windshield, each drop echoing the exhaustion running through his body. He kept his eyes on the empty road, trying to push away the mistakes of the day, but they clung stubbornly to his thoughts. Mira sat in the back seat with her stuffed fox tucked under her chin, studying her father in the rearview mirror. She could always tell when he was worn down, even when he tried to hide it behind long silences and tight smiles. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Aiden forced a breath. "Yeah, sweetheart. Just tired." But his voice cracked slightly. Mira didn't press him. She never did. When the diner's neon sign appeared through the rain, Aiden turned the wheel and pulled in. "Let's get something warm to eat," he murmured. Mira nodded, pulling her jacket tighter as they stepped out into the wet air. Inside, the diner was a soft blend of clinking plates and murmured conversations. Lena, juggling two trays, and a headache that wouldn't fade, spotted them and hurried over. "Welcome in," she said, her smile thin but sincere. Mira smiled back. "Aye." Aiden only nodded. As Lena guided them to a booth, she asked, "Long day?" Her tone carried genuine empathy, but Aiden felt too afraid to receive it. "Something like that," he said, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Lena wrote down their order, though her tired fingers slipped, and she accidentally mixed up the numbers. She corrected it quickly, but Aiden's eyes narrowed anyway. "Can we just make sure it's right? I really don't want any more mistakes tonight." Lena's breath hitched. "Of course." Mira watched the exchange with wide eyes, sensing something brittle between the adults. When the food arrived, a small error in Mira's plate triggered another crack in the fragile atmosphere. Lena apologized, offering to replace it, but Mira shook her head gently. "It's okay," she said. "I don't mind." Lena's throat tightened at the kindness. "Thank you," she whispered. Aiden opened his mouth to apologize for his tone earlier, but couldn't find the right words. The fatigue sat too heavily on him. As they ate, the diner grew louder with new customers, stretching Lena even thinner. She moved from table to table, slipping between smiles and quiet panic. Aiden noticed, but didn't know how to approach the growing discomfort inside him. Mira, meanwhile, kept glancing at Lena with worried eyes. When the bill arrived, Aiden spotted an extra charge that hadn't matched the menu price. "Excuse me," he called gently at first, but his voice sharpened as frustration over the day resurfaced. "This isn't what the menu says." Lena froze. "It's correct," she said quickly. "The system updated prices." Aiden sighed. "Then the menu should match." "I don't control the menu," Lena replied, her voice cracking with stress. Mira tugged her father's sleeve. "Dad, please." He closed his eyes for a moment and lowered his tone. "I'm not blaming you. I'm just trying to understand." But Lena heard only the earlier edge in his voice and stepped back, feeling attacked. "I'm doing the best I can," she whispered before turning away. Aiden felt the guilt slide into his chest like a slow ache. When it was time to leave, Mira hesitated, glancing toward the counter where Lena struggled to steady her breathing. Without telling her father, she slipped her hand into her pocket and pulled out a small drawing she had made at school earlier that day. She walked up quietly and tucked it into the corner of Lena's apron. Lena didn't notice until closing time. When she finally unfolded the paper, she saw an uneven but heartfelt drawing of a smiling woman holding a tray. Beneath it, written in Mira's simple handwriting, were 4 words: "I hope you're okay." The note made Lena sit down abruptly. She pressed a hand to her chest, swallowing hard against the wave of emotion. No one had asked her that in a long time. Meanwhile, Aiden drove home through the easing rain. His knuckles relaxed now, but his thoughts heavy. Mira leaned forward in her seat. "Dad?" "Yeah." "She was really sad." Aiden exhaled. "I know. You are sad too." He glanced at her in the rearview mirror, surprised by the quiet depth in her voice. "Maybe we all were." Mira hugged her fox. "I hope she feels better when she reads my note." Aiden didn't know about the drawing, but something in her certainty softened him. "I hope so too." When they reached home, the house felt colder than usual. Aiden tucked Mira into bed, brushing her hair off her forehead. She whispered, "Tomorrow will be better, right?" He hesitated, then kissed her cheek. "I'll try to make sure it is." Downstairs, he sat on the couch and stared at the wall. The argument with Lena replayed in fragments. The tension, the exhaustion, the misunderstanding layered over misunderstanding. He rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of his own mistakes. "I shouldn't have snapped," he muttered to himself. Across town, Lena sat alone in the empty diner, the little drawing resting in her lap like a fragile lifeline. She traced the shaky lines with a fingertip, wondering why such a small gesture touched her so deeply. Maybe because it came from someone who saw her for a moment, even when she felt invisible to everyone else. In the quiet hours that followed, the rain finally stopped, leaving the world washed clean but fragile. Aiden lay awake, replaying the evening and wondering how everything had grown so heavy so quickly. Across town, Lena locked up the diner with Mira's drawing tucked in her bag, unaware that it held a spark she desperately needed without knowing why. And one she would remember. The morning light filtered softly through the curtains as Aiden tried to shake the unrest that the night had left behind. Mira ate her cereal quietly, glancing at him now and then, as if checking whether the heaviness in his chest had dissolved even a little. He forced a small smile, hoping it would reassure her, but she frowned anyway, sensing the strain he couldn't hide. After breakfast, he packed her lunch, trying to distract himself with routine, but his thoughts kept circling back to the diner, to Lena's tired eyes and the sharpness in his own voice that he regretted more with each passing minute. On the drive to school, Mira hummed a tune under her breath, something she always did when she was worried. Aiden reached over and squeezed her hand gently. "You okay?" he asked. Mira nodded but remained quiet. The silence settled between them again, familiar yet uncomfortable, a reminder that both of them carried pieces of last night with them. When they arrived at school, Mira hugged her father a little longer than usual. "I hope the waitress is okay," she whispered against his shirt. He closed his eyes briefly, wishing he could undo every tense moment from the night before. "I hope so too," he murmured back. As she ran off toward her classroom, Aiden watched her ponytail swish from side to side, a small rhythm that anchored him even on his hardest days. At work, Aiden tried to bury himself in tasks, but his mind drifted relentlessly. During a meeting, he found himself replaying the moment he questioned the bill, the way Lena's shoulders tightened, the way her voice cracked. He sighed, ignoring his coworker's curious glance. There was something about the whole encounter that refused to settle, something unfinished, something that tugged at him with quiet persistence. Meanwhile, across town, Lena wiped down a counter at the diner, exhaustion already weighing on her even though her shift had just begun. She hadn't slept well after closing the night before. She kept seeing Mira's drawing, the small shaky lines, the gentle message, the unexpected kindness. It warmed her for a moment, but then the memory of Aiden's frustrated tone resurfaced, stirring the tension inside her again. Around mid-morning, the diner's old landline rang. Lena answered, her voice steady but tired. "Hello, Red Lantern Diner." The owner approached and motioned for the phone. "It's about last night," he whispered. Lena stiffened, dread coiling tight inside her. The owner spoke briefly, occasionally glancing at her with a frown. When he hung up, he approached her slowly. "That was the man from last night," he said. Lena felt her heart drop. "Did he complain?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The owner hesitated. "He just wanted to ask about the bill discrepancy, but he sounded irritated. I think he wanted things fixed." Lena swallowed hard, misinterpreting every word as a direct attack. "So he called to report me," she said quietly. The owner shook his head, but her fear drowned out his attempt at reassurance. She imagined losing hours, losing her job, losing the fragile balance she was fighting desperately to keep. By lunchtime, Lena struggled to focus. When Aiden unexpectedly walked into the diner again, tension crackled instantly. He had come only to clarify the misunderstanding, but his entrance made Lena's breath hitch painfully. She braced herself for the worst as he approached the counter, unaware of the storm gathering behind her guarded eyes. "I just wanted to talk about last night's bill," Aiden began, his tone calm but serious. "There's no complaint. I just want to understand what happened." But Lena heard none of the gentleness. She heard only the words she feared most. "Of course you'd come back," she replied sharply. "People like you always want someone to blame." Aiden blinked. "People like me?" he repeated, taken aback. "I'm not blaming anyone." Lena set down the menu she had been holding, her hands trembling. "I work double shifts. I barely sleep, and one mistake is enough for someone to call my boss. What do you want me to say?" Aiden felt the tension rise, though he hadn't expected conflict. "I didn't call to report you," he said firmly. "I just asked a question." Before either could say more, Mira, who had walked in with her class on a school snack trip, saw her father and ran toward him with excitement. But her smile faded instantly when she heard the strained tone between the adults. "Dad?" she whispered. "Why are you both upset?" Her voice wavered. Lena looked at Mira, and everything inside her softened for a moment. But the confusion and hurt were still too strong. "Honey," she said gently, "it's just grown-up problems." Mira's eyes filled with tears. "Are you fighting because of my note?" she asked, trembling. "Did I make things worse?" Aiden knelt down to her level. "No, sweetheart," he said, but Mira was already crying, overwhelmed by guilt. She didn't understand. The other customers turned to watch, and Lena's stomach twisted painfully as she realized how far this misunderstanding had spiraled. Aiden carried Mira outside to comfort her, and Lena stood frozen by the counter, Staring at the door after them, she felt a mix of regret, frustration, and something deeper she couldn't name. She hadn't meant for things to escalate, yet her fears had doubled every emotion until she couldn't see the truth clearly anymore. Aiden finally calmed Mira enough for her class to return to school, though she glanced back repeatedly. Worry etched across her small face. When Aiden returned to the diner, he didn't approach the counter. Instead, he stood by the door, meeting Lena's eyes with quiet exhaustion. "We're stuck in a circle that keeps hurting everyone," he said softly. "Especially Mira." Lena didn't answer. She looked down at her hands, fighting the tightness in her throat. "I'm not your enemy," he said, his voice dropping even lower. "But I think we both keep assuming the worst." Lena closed her eyes, and for a brief moment, her defenses strained under the weight of truth. "Maybe we do," she whispered. But the fragile moment broke too soon, and both stepped back, unsure how to bridge the growing gap. The evening air felt colder than usual as Aiden walked Mira back to the car after school. She held his hand tightly, still shaken from the scene earlier. Aiden hated how her small shoulders drooped with guilt she never should have carried. "You didn't do anything wrong," he reminded her gently as they reached the car. But Mira only nodded half-heartedly, her thoughts still tangled. When they got home, she disappeared into her room and stayed unusually quiet. Aiden stood outside her door, wishing he could erase every confusing moment that had unfolded between him and Lena. Later that night, Mira came downstairs holding a piece of paper. "Dad," she whispered, "can we go back to the diner tomorrow? I want to say sorry." The request tightened something in Aiden's chest. He didn't want to drag her into more tension, but he also saw the need in her eyes. "If it'll help you feel better," he said gently, "we can go." The next afternoon, the diner was quieter, the kind of lull that settled between the lunch and dinner crowds. Lena stood behind the counter, wiping down surfaces with slow movements. Her thoughts drifted restlessly, circling around the moment Mira cried. It replayed again and again, filling her with a mixture of regret and heaviness she couldn't shake. She kept Mira's drawing tucked safely in her apron pocket, almost as if it anchored her through the more difficult moments. When the bell above the door jingled softly, Lena looked up, expecting another customer. Instead, she froze. Aiden and Mira stood in the doorway. The sight made her heart thump painfully, torn between wanting to run and wanting to stay still. Aiden gave a hesitant nod, but it was Mira who took a small, brave step forward. "Hi," Mira whispered. Her voice was so small, Lena had to lean in to hear her. "I made you a card. I wanted to say sorry. In case I made everything worse." Lena's expression crumpled instantly, kneeling down to Mira's height. She shook her head. "Oh, sweetheart, none of this is your fault." Her voice wavered when she added, "Your note made my night better, not worse." Mira gave a tiny, trembling smile and handed her the card. Lena opened it gently. Inside was a drawing of three figures: her, Mira, and Aiden, standing together under a sun that looked too big for the paper. "I thought maybe we could start over," Mira said shyly. Aiden watched them, moved in a way he hadn't expected. Something about the exchange eased the tightness that had been living in his chest. When Lena stood again, she met his eyes. It wasn't hostility this time, just exhaustion mixed with a flicker of understanding. "Can we talk?" Aiden asked quietly. Lena hesitated, then nodded and guided them to a booth. Mira sat beside Aiden, clutching her fox for comfort, while Lena took the seat across from them, twisting a napkin between her fingers. Aiden cleared his throat softly. I didn't call to report you. I really didn't. I just didn't understand the bill. That's it. Lena lowered her gaze. I know now. I just assumed the worst. I panic when things go wrong. She blinked quickly, trying to keep her voice steady. I've been juggling too much. I guess it forced every reaction out of me. Aiden leaned back, the tension slowly easing. I understand. I was stressed too. That's not an excuse, but I didn't talk to you the way I should have. For a moment, their eyes held, a fragile exchange that felt like the first step towards something gentler. They talked quietly, not about the arguments, but about what lived beneath them. Aiden shared small pieces of his life, how raising Mira alone sometimes overwhelmed him, how he tried to stay strong for her even when he felt exhausted to the bone. Lena listened with a softness he hadn't seen before. When he asked her about herself, she hesitated at first, but the warmth in Mira's curiosity, combined with Aiden's patient silence, pulled the truth from her. My mom's sick, she admitted. I'm paying for her treatments, and rent, and everything else. She gave a small, humorless laugh. So I work wherever I can. 2 jobs now. Aiden felt a knot tighten in his stomach. That's a lot for one person. Lena shrugged, but her eyes shimmered. I don't have a choice. Their conversation stayed gentle and slow, the tension between them dissolving little by little. For the first time, they seemed to see each other without the shadows that had clouded everything earlier. Mira, relieved to see them speaking calmly, began to relax. She traced patterns on her fox's fur, glancing between them with a hopeful smile. As the minutes passed, the diner felt warmer, quieter, like the world had shrunk down to just the three of them. But the fragile peace didn't last. When Aiden stepped away for a moment to take a phone call, Mira slid into Lena's side of the booth and whispered, You're really nice. Sometimes. Nicer than Dad when he's tired. She meant it as a compliment, a child's innocent truth. But when Aiden returned and heard her words, he froze. His expression shifted, hurt flickering across his face. Before he could hide it, Mira looked up, confused by the sudden change. Dada, I didn't mean, but he forced a tight smile. It's okay, he said, though his voice carried the sting of something deeper. Lena opened her mouth to explain, but Aiden held up a hand gently. We should get going. Lena felt the shift immediately, a distance forming as clearly as if someone had drawn a line between them. Mira's smile faded as she slid back to her father's side. Aiden thanked Lena quietly, his voice formal again. She nodded, but her chest tightened painfully. The closeness they had just begun to build cracked in an instant, leaving raw confusion in its place. As the door closed behind them, Lena exhaled shackily, clutching the card Mira gave her. She wanted to call out, explain, fix the misunderstanding before it spiraled again. But fear held her in place. Aiden walked Mira to the car, his hand resting gently on her shoulder, but his jaw tense. Mira whispered, Dad, please don't be mad. I'm not, he said softly. I just need a minute. They drove away with the weight of unspoken words pressing down on both of them, while inside the diner, Lena stood alone, wondering how something so fragile slipped through their fingers yet again. The weekend arrived quietly, But Mira refused to let the tension linger any longer. She had a plan. Early Saturday morning, she clutched her handmade invitation tightly, a little trembling in her fingers. As she slipped out the door to deliver it, the note was for Lena, an invitation to Mira's small school performance. She didn't ask her father for permission. She had learned long ago that sometimes grown-ups needed a gentle push. By the time Aiden discovered what she had done, it was too late to stop her, and he sighed, realizing there was no use arguing. Mira's determination had a force all its own. Lena found the invitation tucked under a stack of receipts at the diner, and at first, she hesitated. She had spent the week replaying their last conversation, the small misunderstandings that had kept her at a cautious distance. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to protect herself from another round of confusion or conflict. But as she read Mira's careful handwriting, her resolve melted just enough to make her decision. She would go, not because she expected resolution, but because she couldn't refuse a child who believed in her. Saturday afternoon, the small auditorium buzzed with parents and students. Mira sat in her seat, her legs swinging nervously, her fox stuffed tightly under her arm. Aiden had agreed to come only reluctantly, unsure if seeing Lena again would make his chest heavier. He avoided looking at her, thinking distance would make it easier. Yet when the bell rang and Lena quietly entered, a subtle tension shifted in the room. The way she hesitated at the doorway, scanning for Mira, made Eden notice her in a different light. Human, fragile, and quietly courageous. As the performance began, Mira's small hand shook. She froze midway through her song, the stage lights glaring down, making her feel small and exposed. Panic washed over her, threatening to collapse her courage. Without thinking, Lena leaned forward instinctively, whispering words of encouragement from the front row. "You've got this, Mira. Just breathe, little one." Mira's eyes widened, relief flooding through her, and she found her voice again, finishing the song perfectly. Aiden, watching this moment, felt a warmth he hadn't expected, part pride, part something he wasn't ready to name. After the performance, parents and children mingled, sharing quick congratulations and gentle smiles. Mira ran to Lena and hugged her tightly, a mixture of excitement and relief shining in her eyes. "Thank you for helping me," she exclaimed. Lena hugged her back, feeling a sudden bond that words couldn't define. Aiden approached slowly, watching the exchange with quiet observation. He could see the truth reflected in both their eyes. Genuine care, something neither misunderstanding nor exhaustion could erase. When they were finally alone outside, Aiden exhaled, his tension breaking just slightly. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. Lena looked at him, hesitant but willing to listen, "For assuming the worst, and for pulling back so quickly when I needed you to stay." He paused. "I wasn't always fair to you either." Lena studied him carefully, noticing the vulnerability in his stance. "I guess we both let fear decide our reactions," she admitted. "I've been so focused on protecting myself, I couldn't see anything else." Her voice softened. "But Mira, she reminded me what it's like to trust someone again." Aiden nodded slowly, his eyes meeting hers with an honesty that hadn't been there before. "I've been so focused on being strong for her, I forgot that letting someone else in doesn't make me weak." He hesitated. "I want to try, if you're willing." Lena's lips curved slightly, a mixture of relief and cautious hope. "I think I'd like that," she said, though the words felt like the first step across a fragile bridge. Mira tugged at Aiden's sleeve, looking between the two adults. "Can we maybe be friends?" she asked shyly. Aiden smiled down at her, the warmth in his eyes softening the edges of his worries. "I think we can do even better than that," he said. Lena knelt beside Mira, smiling, and offered a gentle nod. "Friends, and maybe more," she added, carefully, leaving room for the slow unfolding of trust. The three of them walked home together, laughter beginning to slip naturally between them. Mira skipped ahead, holding her fox high, and Aiden reached for Lena's hand, tentative at first, then firmer as comfort and understanding began to replace the old tension. Conversation flowed easier now, with no accusations, no defensiveness, only acknowledgement of their struggles and the tentative steps towards something better. That evening, at home, Mira climbed into bed with a contented sigh. Her fox tucked beside her. "I'm glad you both came," she whispered. Aiden kissed her forehead, feeling the day's lessons settle quietly inside him. "Me too," he said, his voice soft but certain. Then he paused, looking toward Lena, imagining her standing just beyond the doorway. "Today was a start," he added quietly, more to himself than anyone else. Lena walked Mira to the door the next day, leaving a small smile and a promise to see her again. The misunderstandings that had plagued them were still fresh, but the cracks between them had begun to mend. The day ended not with perfection, but with possibility, a fragile, imperfect, and honest step toward connection. For the first time in weeks, Aiden felt his chest lighter, his mind less restless. He realized that the misunderstandings, the assumptions, and the fear had all been barriers keeping him from seeing the potential for warmth and trust. Watching Mira connect with Lena reminded him that life, even when tense and complicated, could bloom in unexpected ways. And for the first time, he allowed himself to believe that perhaps the chaos of that rainy night, the small gestures, and the moments of vulnerability were leading them somewhere meaningful. The story closed with Mira falling asleep peacefully, Aiden standing in the hallway watching over her, and Lena quietly exiting the scene with a sense of hope she hadn't dared to feel before. The misunderstandings hadn't vanished entirely, but they had been confronted, and through honesty and shared vulnerability, a tentative bond had formed. In the quiet aftermath, the three of them were left with the gentle promise that, no matter the complications, connection could always find a way through. The next morning, the sunlight streamed gently through the windows, warming the living room in soft gold. Mira bounced into the kitchen, her energy light and free, a stark contrast to the tension that had weighed on the household just days before. Aiden, leaning against the counter with a mug of coffee in hand, watched her with a smile that reached his eyes. The house felt alive in a way it hadn't in months, a sense of balance, small but tangible. Lena arrived shortly afterward, this time not as a visitor in the edges of their lives, but as someone who belonged in them. Her presence was steady, calm, yet carried an energy that reminded both father and daughter of the warmth that had been missing. She brought Mira's favorite snack, and together, the three of them laughed over small jokes and shared stories. No misunderstandings clouded the air. Aiden finally reached for Lena's hand, a quiet gesture that spoke louder than any words. She squeezed it back, a soft affirmation that they were stepping forward together, imperfectly, cautiously, but fully present. Mira, catching their glance, let out a small cheer, hugging both tightly. It wasn't magic. Life would still hold challenges, misunderstandings, and exhaustion. But what had been built over those small gestures, shared apologies, and honest conversations was stronger than fear. Trust, slowly earned, had replaced suspicion. Kindness, freely given, had replaced hesitation. Aiden realized that letting someone into their lives didn't diminish his strength. It made them all stronger. As the day moved forward, the little family embraced the quiet joy of togetherness. Mira's laughter echoed through the rooms, filling the spaces that had once felt hollow. Aiden and Lena shared small smiles, acknowledging the fragile beauty of what they had begun, a bond not forced, but chosen. In that moment, they understood that life's complexity didn't have to separate them. It could bring them closer, one step at a time. And as the evening settled, with the sky streaked in soft pinks and gold, the three of them sat together, content in the imperfect, beautiful reality of their new beginning. The misunderstandings of the past were not forgotten, but they no longer held power. Instead, hope and understanding guided each next moment, proving that even the most tangled paths could lead to warmth, trust, and love. In the quiet reflection, Aiden found himself thinking life would never be flawless, but together they could navigate it, one gentle, honest day at a time. And that, he realized, was more than enough.